Gotham Knights was one of the two big games we knew about going into DC fandom. It's WB Montreal's big return, this time in their very own world with their very own rules. I was so impressed with their big reveal. Seriously, I was super pumped after watching the trailer and the gameplay that they released. It wasn't until I took to Twitter to see that there were people actually mad about this reveal. I couldn't believe it, but I consider myself to be fairly empathetic, so I thought I would take my time in this video to address some of the biggest complaints about the game, and as a result of addressing those complaints, I get to talk about some of my favorite aspects of the game. Firstly, before we actually jump into this video, I want to remind you to just take 2 seconds out of your day to subscribe if you're not already. If you already are, leaving a like on the video is just as helpful. Hopefully sometime between now and the end of this video, I earn that subscription from you, or that like, but let's jump into it. Honestly, I don't really like making these types of videos. I don't think it's good for my mentality. Like, my default position when I think about games, or my default perspective, is pure enjoyment. Like, it's just positive vibes, because I seek out the games I'm most excited about and I pay attention to those, or I seek out the things I'm particularly excited about and I just look at those things. So I don't really have a lot of reasons to be negative, right? Or else why am I looking over there, right? Why would I spend time thinking about something that I don't like? In this case, I kind of get it though, because if you're a big Batman fan and then this thing gets announced and then, you know, it's not your cup of tea, I could see you being disappointed, right? Because you would prefer them to do something else with the Batman IP. And that's the only reason I'm giving this any time of day. Normally, I wouldn't even try to address points like this, because at the end of the day, if you don't like a concept behind a game, that's fine. Just go find a game that has a concept that you like. There are tens of thousands of games that get made every single year. Surely some company out there is doing something that you like. We're going to go over 4 major complaints I've seen about the game so far, but one thing I want you to keep in mind before we get into those points is that this is very much the vocal minority. If you go on the internet and you look for people talking about any particular game, you're going to find a lot of people complaining. It's not necessarily because the vast majority of people actually want to complain about that game. It's just that if somebody's upset, they're far more likely to go to Twitter and talk about it. For the average person, there's not a whole lot of reason for you to voice your opinion if you're satisfied with something. But if you're upset about something, obviously there's much more reason to be vocal about it, right? Which is why you end up seeing so many circles that are so vocal about disliking things. It only takes a handful of people complaining about something to make it seem like the entire world hates that thing. How many times have you seen people complaining about Fortnite online, or saying that it's for kids only, or something like that? Meanwhile, every second person you run into on the street has probably played Fortnite this month. And I want something to be clear. The vocal minority in this case isn't even that vocal. The reaction to this game has been overwhelmingly positive. There's not a whole lot of people complaining about this game. However, these complaints are out there, and I think it's important for me to address these complaints, because if this is going to be a game that I want to cover on the channel, I should at least have one video dedicated to these talking points. So, like I said, there's going to be 4 points to go over. We're going to talk about Bruce Wayne's death. We're going to be talking about the gameplay and how it's not similar to the Arkham series. We're going to be talking about the comparisons being made to the Marvel Avengers game, and lastly, we'll be talking about that Mr. Freeze boss fight. So, first of all, let's talk about Bruce Wayne's death. This complaint stems from the idea of people not wanting to buy a quote-unquote Batman game when you can't even play as Batman. And I kind of understand this point of view. Maybe. I honestly, not really. Like, I'm a huge Batman fan. Batman might have my favorite mythos of all of the DC characters, with possibly the exception of the Flash, because I love me some Barry Allen. But like, regardless of all that, Batman's not even in the title. It's called Gotham Knights. The developers and WB are being incredibly transparent about what this game is. They're not trying to trick you into thinking it's a Batman game. It's a Gotham game, specifically a Bat Family game. I don't know how most of the community felt about this at the time, because I didn't really use YouTube, but when I first played through the Arkham games, the biggest thing that I wanted as a player was the ability to play as the Bat Family. I wanted more Bat Family stories. I wanted Batgirl to be a big part of the story. I wanted Nightwing to be a big part of the story. Heck yeah, give me some Red Hood. But at the end of the day, Bruce Wayne got 4 video games. Sorry, I should be more clear. He got 4 video games set in the same world. There have been plenty of Batman games in the past, and there will be plenty of Batman games in the future. I think the big man will be okay if he's not the main focus of this particular game. And even still, he's kind of the focus of this game. Our objective of our 4 main heroes is to carry on the legacy that he left behind. So narratively, it's even about him, even though he's not even there. And honestly, I'd be surprised if Batman is actually dead. I mean, we're talking about a Court of Owls story where the setup is that Batman is dead. Surely he's just brainwashed or captured or something like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it would be awesome if WB Montreal was brave enough to just kill the Batman, but I just don't see it happening. I'm pretty sure Bruce Wayne is alive. Besides, even if Batman himself isn't playable in this game, I would be shocked if there's a Bruce Wayne fan out there who wouldn't be satisfied with a Tim Drake game, a Jason Todd game, a Barbara Gordon game, or a Dick Grayson game. And the fact that all 4 of those characters are going to be front and center this time around shouldn't dissuade any Batman fan from being excited about this game. I shouldn't say shouldn't, right? If you feel a certain way, that's fine. You feel how you want to feel. But I'll say as a Batman fan myself, I am far more excited for this game than I would have been for just another Batman game. Next, I want to address this narrative. The gameplay isn't like the Arkham series. My knee-jerk reaction to this is that the game kinda does look like it plays like the Arkham series. What people really mean to say when they say this is that the game doesn't use the same combat system. Previously, it was referred to as free flow combat. That's the system that the Arkham games used, and it's even something that WB has continued to use in a couple of their games. And it's true. This game does not use that system, but I'm completely okay with that. In fact, as much as I love that system, it does limit the development team. At the very least, it limits their design options. Getting rid of that system, the free flow combat system, is neither good or bad. All it means is that they're going to be replacing it with something. That thing could be either good or bad, we shall see, but my guess is that if a team like WB Montreal is confident enough to take out a combat system that has been so positively received, they probably have something good to replace it with, and from what we've seen so far, it looks pretty good. WB Montreal clearly cares about retaining the feel of both freedom of choice and freedom of movement, similar to what we expect from the Arkham series. They're very much trying to retain that feel of approach this situation however you'd like. And at the end of the day, that's what I loved about the Arkham series. Next, I want to talk about the idea of this game being too much like the Marvel Avengers game. Believe it or not, this is pretty much the biggest complaint I've seen about this game, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand this perspective at all. I actually don't get it. I don't understand how someone could look at these two games being Gotham Knights and Marvel Avengers, and think that these are remotely the same thing. Marvel Avengers is a 4-player co-op game that is either endless or live service, depending on which one of those two terms you're familiar with, where you and a group of 3 friends choose between a huge list of missions, beating up waves of enemies, completing objectives, and then being rewarded with character upgrades. Whereas Gotham Knights is a up to 2-player game. It's open world, which is huge, and shares some of those same RPG elements where you upgrade your character. But if that's enough to compare Marvel Avengers and Gotham Knights, I mean, at that point, you can compare pretty much any co-op game to Marvel Avengers. RPG elements like gear or loot is just one way of rewarding the player, and it's a very easy way of rewarding the player. It gives them a nice feedback loop. I really like loot systems, but I think we're really far away from comparing those two games. And for me personally, those RPG elements are exactly what's going to keep me playing this game. I'm looking forward to customizing both my character's visual design and also creating different builds for them for any given situation. That sounds fantastic to me. I'm also looking forward to playing through the game with a friend. It's been a long time since I've played a co-op game, especially one that I enjoyed. If co-op is the thing turning you off from the game though, they've actually already explicitly addressed that. The game can be freely played in single player. Even in the gameplay that they released with Batgirl and Robin, which is of course 2 people playing co-op, the cinematic cutscenes are only shown from one player's perspective. So at the very least, the story is written to be single player friendly. Like, I don't think the takeaway from this game is supposed to be that it's a co-op game. I think that it's just supposed to be a game that has co-op as an option. I could be wrong with that interpretation, but based on the way that they're talking about it, that's what it sounds like to me. And lastly, I want to talk about the Mr. Freeze boss fight. I really can't believe that I have to talk about this. I've seen some people say that this boss fight looks too easy, and I can kind of understand that perspective if you were just like watching it and you weren't really like trying to pay too much attention to it. Maybe. Firstly, the boss fights in the Arkham series, not that hard. I'm gonna be honest, not a super difficult game. okay? Especially not on lower difficulties, which is fine, right? That's neither good or bad. You can have a difficult game, you can have an easy game, and you can have options for in between, but just have like a tiny bit of perspective. The Mr. Freeze fight looks pretty solid. Mr. Freeze clearly has like different phases to him. So at the start of the fight, he's kind of just swinging around his weapon, and then eventually he goes into a different phase where he does like an AoE effect at his feet, and you have to try and, I guess, avoid it, or maybe you can damage him out of it. We shall see. And we only see our two playable characters here do less than 25% damage to the opponent's health, and then it goes into a completely new phase, and we have no idea what's after that. To comment on whether this boss fight is difficult or not is kind of silly. We have no idea how difficult this is. We've only saw the very first phase of the fight, maybe 2 phases if you count like the ground pound thing he did. And you know, maybe my memory's bad. It's been a long time since I played the Arkham games, but to my memory, those boss fights all started off pretty easy, and they kind of gradually got harder the more health he took off the opponent, because they went into like different phases of different difficulties, right? I could easily see Mr. Freeze being more difficult the deeper you get into his fight. So for example, like there's hail and it slows down your character, and you have to like get to a specific spot on the stage. So now you have to move through the hail, which is slowing you, to get to a specific area on the map to avoid damage from, you know, I don't know, an ice meteor or something, right? These are just various things that could be happening after the first phase of this fight. We literally only see the first phase. Like, I get it if you came away from this gameplay showcase saying like, I wish there was more, but you can't really say that this fight was too easy. We just don't see enough of it. I feel like the people that said that this fight was too easy think that the trailer ended with Batgirl beating Mr. Freeze. The fight didn't finish. We didn't see it all. Anyway, like I said, I really don't like doing these types of videos just because it's just not my thing, man. I don't like rolling around in the mud. And I kind of feel like I'm rolling around the mud a little bit when I talk about these types of arguments. They're just kind of silly. Like all of these arguments that you hear about games, especially right after they just get announced, they're all like super premature. Like that last one we just talked about is a really good example of it. It's like, how are you going to complain about a boss fight being too easy when you haven't even seen the whole fight? That's insanity to me. Or like the people complaining about the RPG systems. What RPG systems? We've hardly even seen any of them. We've seen like a health bar above somebody's head. That's it. You can't even tell me what you don't like because they haven't shown it yet. And then once we get to this point in the conversation, I kind of think to myself, well, are the people complaining even interested in the game in the first place? Because if I hear about a game and it has like a mechanic or a couple systems that I personally don't like, or systems that I would prefer to have taken a different direction, that's never enough for me to be like, man, I don't want to play this game. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it was a bit ranty. Again, I'll try not to do these videos. I don't like them. I know people like watching these types of videos, but like I said, I'm not a huge fan of making them. I also think it kind of spreads like a level of negativity, which I don't like. I try to be very positive on this channel, just because I feel like there's enough negative energy out in the world already. We might as well focus on the things that we enjoy on this channel. At least that's where I'm at. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. Anyway, if you managed to make it all the way through this video, I'd be very impressed. If you haven't already, I hope I earned your subscription this video. Leave a like on the video. It helps other people find it. My name is Bilbzy, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next video.